Okay. We are officially calling the meeting to order at 7:05. I'd like to go around and just state who is here.
Charles Abercrombie, member.
Dick Mahusky, secretary. John Dilley, member.
Carolyn Camlett, alternate.
Greg Podleski, prospective member.
Okay, and then the first order of business, which is actually not on our agenda, is because we do not have one of our full members. I'd like to propose that we nominate Carolyn to become a voting member for the purposes of today's meeting. Do I hear a second?
You just have to appoint her as the.
Oh, I just have to appoint.
Yeah.
I don't have to. Okay, I hereby.
We don't have to vote on that.
All right.
I probably didn't have your vote.
No,
so I
you
hereby
certainly
appoint
have
Carolyn
my vote. It's
as a voting member for the purposes of today's meeting.
I happened to be reading the statutes today, and I remember reading that the chairman shall.
Great.
Okay. I did not send out the minutes of the November meeting. I don't know, Prue, you didn't send those out either. And Dick,
oh no, I'm sorry.
I thought
because usually Dick sends it out.
I have the draft minutes.
You have the draft minutes? Okay. Oh, good. Then, so the first order of business then is to consider and act upon the minutes of the November meeting. Do I have any edits or suggested comments on those minutes?
Yeah, I have two. One more in the nature of a question, but.
Okay, I'm sorry, I can't hear that person.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is Chuck Abercrombie, Prue.
Oh, hi, Chuck.
With respect to the update on the Rooster River, which now says waiting for Army Corps of Engineer approval, my notes reflect that someone mentioned that no conservation analysis is required for this project, saving a year of time.
That's correct.
And that seems to be something that probably is worth putting into the minutes.
Oh, it was said during the meeting. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Yes. Yes. It was determined that we did not need to do the full conservation analysis.
So you can say waiting for ACOE approval, perhaps semicolon. It has been determined that no conservation analysis will be required, thereby saving approximately 1 year.
Prue, did you catch that?
Okay, no conservation analysis is required, potentially saving a year.
That sounds fine.
Good catch.
And did you have any other?
Yeah, and the second one on the Penfield Beach Resiliency Project, that $100,000, not familiar with that. Is that meant to be 100% of the project, or is
that was authorized?
I'm not remembering the 100,000.
That was authorized by the town bodies to do a resilience project in front of Penfield Pavilion. I believe the bid came in at $84,000, and the project is currently on hold.
Right, that part is clear. The 100,000, I just didn't.
That was the budget that was authorized.
I just didn't remember it. Okay, I thought perhaps it was a typo.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's it for me.
Any other comments on that?
I have a couple comments. Page 1, item 3, second bullet point, Turney Creek Tide Gate replacement. Change the word upper to coffer so that reads coffer dam in and add in place. So it reads coffer dam in place.
Okay, I'm sorry, is that a C or
C?
Coffer?
C is in Charlie.
Okay.
Coffer dam. In place.
Okay.
The coffer dam is what separates the work site from the Long Island Sound waters. So they need to put that in place in order to work within that coffer dam that keeps the water out. And then on page 2, so this would be item 3, and this is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 6th bullet point, or the last bullet point in item 3, Penfield Pavilion. There has been a 100%, I would strike the word of, and just so that it reads, there has been a 100% remediation of soil, period. Then I would add 98% of insert old piles are gone, because they are installing new piles. So just to be clear, that the old piles are mostly gone, having been replaced by the new structure, support structure.
Okay.
And then at the very bottom of the second page, item 7, the fourth bullet point down, Becky Bunnell thanked everyone for approving the POCD/Save the Sound letter on the 2040 flood map. I listened to the recording, and I would suggest that we make more sense by simply putting a period striking everything from the /Save the Sound letter on the 2040 flood map. Just strike all of that and have it finished by saying Becky Bunnell thanked everyone for approving the POCD comment letter. And that's verbatim from the recording. Thanks for approving the POCD comment letter.
Comments, maybe, with an S? It was comment? Okay.
That's how I heard it. So those are my slight adjustments or edits.
Did anyone else have any edits or suggestions?
I did not.
Does anyone have any comments on those edits or suggestions? Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve as amended?
I suggest that we approve these draft minutes as annotated by the comments made herein.
Can I get a second?
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
I'm sorry, who seconded that?
John Dilly seconded.
That was
John.
John Dilly.
Okay.
Approved. Sorry.
Thank you.
All right. Crew, I'm going to move on to agenda item 2, which is the organizational meeting for the 2025 term, election of officers.
Madam Chairwoman, this is Dick Mahusky, the current secretary of this board, and I would put into nomination for chair the name of Ms. Becky Bunnell, because she has done an excellent job in this position, and I see no reason how anyone could do any better for 2025.
Well,
I don't know about that. Do I have any other nominations for chair? Would anyone else like to be chair? Hearing none, is there any discussion? Hearing none, do we have a second?
This is John Dilly. I second that.
I will accept that. But let's all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Let the record reflect it's unanimous.
Exactly.
Let's move on to vice chair. Don Lamberti said that he would be willing to serve, but also willing to step down if someone else had wanted to serve. And I'd like to make a nomination of John Dilly for vice chair. I think, with his work on the inland wetlands, or the Mill River committee.
Synonymous.
Yeah, it is. A lot of it's inland wetlands. I think he brings a lot of riverine experience to a lot of the coastal work that we've had previously done, and I think he'd make a great vice chair. So I'd like to propose that.
And I would second that nomination. This is Dick.
Are there any other people who would like to be vice chair or like to be put forward for consideration? Hearing none, is there any discussion?
No.
Hearing none, can we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye?
Aye.
So moved. We have a quorum.
Unanimous.
Secretary. Dick, unfortunately, will be stepping down.
Can't do it.
Because he is terming out. So we do need a secretary for the 2025 year. Dick, do you want to just explain what the secretarial duties are so that people know if they want to step into that?
Basically, the secretary is responsible to get the minutes and the agendas to the town clerk for appropriate posting. The actual yeoman's work in that task is done by the recording secretary, who has for a while been Prue O'Brien. And I have been vice chairman, chairman, and secretary, and in all of those roles, I have put stuff on our webpage. Gotten Jen Carpenter and before her Kathleen to help us do that, post it on the webpage. So I've primarily done that. I primarily set up the email account that we use on the town's website, so that and I've shared the access to that with Becky. What we did with that, we decided that we wouldn't have everyone have the ability to manipulate that, because in my mind, if it got screwed up, I wanted myself to blame only and not share the blame with someone else who may have done an inadvertent keystroke on that. But the position is basically no more than being involved in the actions of the board.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's my view of it.
Is there anyone who would be interested in being secretary? And you actually, if you had any interest, even though you're not officially on, you're welcome to.
I'd rather get a feel for the position before I take the position.
Well, I would suggest that we nominate our new alternate member, Carolyn Camlin, to be secretary, because I can find nowhere that it says alternate members have to sit in the corner and keep their mouths shut. And I would propose that our alternate members, of which we currently have one of the three that we're hoping to attract, I would suggest that they be a full participating member in everything that this board does, except for voting, and unless they are sitting in for one of the 7 regular members who have the vote on the board. So that's what I would put into nomination.
Well, I feel a little bit, thank you very much, but I feel a little bit like this is my second meeting, and I'm a little worried about keeping up to speed with as much as others. I mean, if this were even 6 months down the road, I might feel a little differently, but right now, coming in, because obviously every role is important, but keeping tabs on, and you just sent me while I was on the train last Friday, all the documents I should be reading. I am reading them, making my own acronym list, all kinds of things. So while I feel that I might be able to do it somewhere down the road, I'm not sure at this point in time it would behoove the board to have me be such a new.
Okay, I think you are selling yourself short. I think you have all the capability necessary to execute this august position.
Well, the only mandatory is taking Prue's minutes and posting them on the town with the town clerk.
And I mean, if the recording secretary is not in attendance, it is incumbent upon the secretary to keep the minutes. And
right, that's
or if by some chance the secretary is not around either. I mean,
then someone else would be nominated by the board.
Yeah, we have done that.
Yeah.
In the past.
I don't want to push you into it if you don't feel comfortable, but I would certainly be supportive if you did feel you could do that.
And besides, if you get hung up with something, you can always call a neighbor to ask for assistance.
Or walk across the street and well, I mean, I don't know. I'm a big newbie, and you guys know that I care a lot about these issues and have dealt with them from FDRA standpoint, but
that's about 80% of the battle right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's see if there's a second to that nomination.
Or somebody else feels like they would like to do it.
Chuck would not like to. Greg is too new. We don't.
Well, that's kind of. If we want to defer this and leave this position open until the next meeting.
Or not? Would he not?
No, Don is not interested. At least that's
my take
from my conversations with him.
And he misses too many meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we could defer this to January, and you could think about it if you want.
Well, if we could do that, I could work with Dick, over this month and see how you actually do this, so that the mechanics of it all.
It's easy peasy.
The basic part is very easy. What Dick takes on way more than the secretary. What Dick does is
you were doing the webpage and all that.
Yeah. What Dick does is well beyond the secretary. The only real secretarial need is to take Prue's minutes,
right,
post them within. Any actions that had to be voted on have to be posted as a draft with the town clerk within 24 hours, and then the final minutes. Well, okay. It's supposed to. And then the final minutes those draft minutes need to be taken down. When the final ones are approved in the following meeting, we need to send the final.
And the technical steps of putting them up there and taking them down are not you, it's somebody else.
You know, you send it to the town clerk.
They post them, you don't have to know about
All you
how
do is
to work the
send,
website.
please post these for this meeting date.
Okay.
So that's the only real secretarial task, I think, in terms of Dick, as I said, does way more than he needs to as pure secretary, but that's.
Can he become our other alternate?
No. Yeah, a year from now.
All right, well, why don't we do this? Yes, I'll do this. Oh, well, we haven't voted, if that's what, but.
I would second this, then. I would second the motion that you take on secretarial if you're comfortable, but I don't want to push you into it if you don't feel comfortable.
No, I sent you notes that I really do want to be very involved when there were parts that I said to Becky, parts that I would like to do, so. All righty, wait till I get home.
Okay. All right, then we need to vote on that, so we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank
So
you.
moved. Thank
Another
you.
I'm sorry.
unanimous
Thank you,
support.
I know. Thank you, Prue.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you just tell me what that motion was again, please?
This was
Exactly.
Carolyn Camlet would be secretary for the 2025 year.
Okay, great.
The motion was made by Dick and seconded by Becky. And
Okay, thank you.
And the next agenda item as part of 2B is meeting dates, which we had talked about just keeping the second Tuesday of the month at 7 p.m. if everyone is comfortable.
Is it the second Tuesday or the third Tuesday?
Oh, I'm sorry, the third
Third,
Tuesday.
Yeah.
Apologies.
But that list of dates looked good when we went over it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, those dates, I saw no conflict with holidays and things.
Agreed.
On those
Yeah.
dates, so.
They all look fine to me.
And it doesn't mean we wouldn't have special meetings. I mean, I think just to be clear, we're likely to have some special meetings, particularly as we get into this plan, because we will have to have a special called meeting for the kickoff meeting, for example. Everyone would be invited, to the kickoff meeting and to the key meeting. So we may decide to cancel some of these meetings if we've had, a special meeting, but let's just assume right now that we'll keep these we'll put these on the calendar. These go on the official town calendar. So can I hear a motion to approve the third Tuesday of the month at 7 p.m.?
I'll make a motion to approve the third Tuesday of every month at 7 p.m. for our meeting.
And I'll second it, Chuck Abercrombie.
That was John that made the original motion.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All approved, say aye.
Aye.
So moved. Okay. Moving on to our the new name, the composition, and the webpage update as authorized by the passage of the town ordinance by the RTM on October 28th, 24. Dick kindly had put together some language that he was proposing the update so that we would update the town website. That was sent around to everybody. We were going to have a special called meeting to discuss, and we ended up canceling that and deferring that to this meeting. There were two versions of the function. I don't know if you guys both got a chance to look at the original plus the second version. I personally preferred the second version of the function.
That's the two versions that was on the same email, right?
I think he had it on the...
I sent an email around because I reread it and I had second thoughts, so I sent an email with just the two versions, the original version and the second version. And
I actually had only one edit on the second version. I think the last sentence says that we work specifically in conjunction with the engineering and conservation departments. I would put in engineering, DPW, project management and conservation departments. Because that's really the group I think we work with.
That's good.
We work with.
I like that. Yep.
But other than that, I did not have any comments other than to add in. I think you hadn't written the town charter number page in it, and then obviously adding the new officers and adding Greg to the chart and Carolyn to the chart. because at the time you had not
Right.
done them yet.
And changing you from D to U.
Yes.
Because you're unaffiliated.
I am unaffiliated, correct.
Yeah, and I will wait on, now, Jen Carpenter has been picking up, like she picked up Carolyn.
It's already on, actually.
Yeah, it's already on, so she.
And you'll be on as of tomorrow anyway.
She picks that up.
So were there any other comments or recommendations from anyone else on the?
I had gone through and made some comments, but it's not opening, but nothing material.
Do you want to state this topic?
I had marked it up online when I sent it, and I got distracted. I was telling Becky and I didn't send it back to you, but there was nothing material. It was small stuff, but I will look at it. But
And to give you some background, we did a town ordinance to update our name per the state statutes, and this was done in the 2021 session of the state assembly, where the flood and erosion control boards were updated to flood prevention, climate resilience, and erosion control boards. So there's a name change.
In the name of brevity.
Yeah, exactly right. And just so you know, also we call ourselves FERB because we feel that's too long to say. We used to be flood and erosion. What?
The FECB.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And FECB was not pronounceable, but FERB is pronounceable.
FERB is pronounceable.
So
So
that's
even
better than
progress.
and FREB didn't sound good.
Maybe
So we said FERB.
friendlies.
So we decided to give ourselves an acronym just to make it easier to say. So we pretty much picked up the language from the state statute to update it.
Well, so John, do you have your comments?
It's not opening up. There was nothing material. One of them was a question around FERB and whether it was actually a state mandated.
No,
that's our own.
That's our own acronym.
No, FERB was. I'm sorry, the written.
Oh, the written out was flood prevention, climate resilience.
Yes, that's exactly what FERB is.
Yeah. But I don't think there was anything else material. But I for some reason, it's not opening on my laptop.
And the other thing that I was going to.
Those are my comments.
I was going to mention in this blurb is that we now so I do say the Flood Prevention, Climate Resilience, and Erosion Control Board derives its authority via the town charter and town code, which adopt the provisions of Connecticut state statutes, blah, blah. And I was going to put in the town code charter in there, but it hasn't been assigned yet. Yeah. And in conversation with the town clerk, she said that she expects that they will make that update in January, after the first of the year. Why it takes 2+ months to do that, I did not drill down to ask that question. But I mean, this is apparently a service that we subscribe to, which takes our stuff and puts it into the E-code system. And if they're a service, boy, their service isn't very timely to my way of thinking, but be that as it may.
Maybe they're not worried because the Charter Revision Committee.
So if it gets there on January 3rd, I'll change this again.
All right.
Have Jennifer redo it.
So, hearing no other comments, do I have a motion to approve Dick's revised version 2 as amended by me to add in DPW and project management?
And conservation, right?
Well, conservation was already in there.
Oh, okay. I don't have my revised version.
Oh, you don't have this version 2? Right, okay. Do I hear a motion to approve that?
I'll move to approve it.
Do I hear a second?
A second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So Prue, did you get the revision? Or you know what, Dick, do you want to just make the revision and send it so that she has it?
Oh yeah, that would be great, because I didn't get the original revision. I just got what you added, engineering conservation.
Do you think we no, I don't think we should bother putting the whole text of this into the minutes.
No,
because
no, I think
it will appear
we'll just say we approved it with a revision.
Yeah.
As amended.
Okay.
All right, I'd like to move on to agenda item 4, which is an update and discussion of status of active projects. I don't have any major updates. I know we have several projects listed here. I have not talked to Bill Hurley and gotten any updates since our last meeting, so I'm not sure I have any major updates. I will say that some of the storm drain catch basins, actually just the storm drain piece itself, not the catch basin itself, have been being updated on Fairfield Beach Road, which I thought was interesting. I don't know if we're seeing any on Penfield Road, but
no, not that I've seen.
They're putting them in. They told me they were putting them in because I guess the paving company that works with us can only work for another week before it gets too cold. So they did put a couple new ones in.
Oh.
But they didn't actually dig out the catch basin itself or do anything really to make that any larger. But it was just they just lowered in a drain. So I don't know if that's going to mitigate flooding particularly. I will say Penfield Pavilion is looking like the last I heard was it was supposed to be completed in January. So one of the things that I think we need to do is request a budget reconcile for Penfield Pavilion and look at what they're planning on doing for landscaping, sand fencing, and vegetation, because I did not see that in any of the original plans. And I assume that they would want to do that prior to getting the notice of violation eliminated. So I'm happy to write that letter to the town asking for what their plan is for landscaping, sand fencing, and vegetation. One of the things that I feel strongly about is that the town, I don't know if it's a town code, but certainly I think the town forestry division has a mandate that for every 10 parking spaces you have to have trees. And I was thinking that we might want to put the trees in stormwater tree boxes because one of the reasons why the trees were eliminated from the last go-round was that I believe the language was they will become projectiles in a big hurricane. But I think that doesn't happen if it's in a tree box. Do you know what stormwater tree boxes are? They're basically I don't think it serves the same function in a coastal area necessarily that serves in others, but it's basically a sort of a rain garden that has a tree planted in it. And it allows
percolation
water
of the
down.
stormwater. Yeah.
But what it does do is it creates a surround around the tree and usually a grate around the top, which would keep it from flying out and becoming a projectile, which would also get us the shade that we would want to be in the parking lot.
My sense is that those trees would not be 80-foot tall oak trees. They would be smaller trees, shielded from the onshore winds by the pavilion structure itself.
Yes.
And I disagree with that idea that they would become projectiles. I just don't think so.
And I do know there's a height limit because when Ian was complaining about FDRA planting trees in the parking lot, Jack Minder specifically called him and said these would be shade trees, but not
really tall.
Yeah.
So they still can see across from his house on Valley.
I mean, it should be both in the paved parking lot as well as the 2 dirt parking lots.
Right.
And I don't know if that was in
the dirt part. I don't think the dirt parking lots lend itself to that because there are no identified spaces in the dirt parking lot. It's just like
Yeah, but we could still say for every 10.
There.
You could sort of say where that drainage is terrible on that dirt parking lot. It looked like they did some grading on it, but it doesn't look like it did anything for the drainage.
No, it's not.
Is this anything you know anything about? Saying if we have an expert now.
Dirt parking lots, for all intents and purposes, are impervious.
Right.
So you got that right there. The tree boxes can function. I've never used them. But I know New Haven uses them in a number of places.
Yeah.
You obviously need any trees that you would get would need to be
Water
tolerant.
Salt tolerant and water tolerant.
Because you are going to get a lot of salt water there.
Yeah.
it's actually very difficult to go and narrow down the trees that you would want, because first off, the soils wouldn't support tall trees. The neighbors don't want tall trees.
Yeah.
As far as them being knocked out and becoming projectiles, no, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
They might fall on a car if you're parked nearby, but they aren't going any significant distance. Now, they might, if you got severe flooding and they float, they could float.
But if you had them in a tree box, then presumably the roots would mitigate.
Yeah, the tree box probably would have a tendency to not quite anchor it as much, because it's got a defined strata.
Yeah.
And you have, down at the bottom, you have a gravel type.
Yeah.
To allow for the drainage, so you're not trapping the roots.
The way dirt would. Yeah.
In water. The tree box, it's more of an academic difference as for how secure the tree's gonna be. The tree boxes have other benefits. They do a little bit of filtration of the runoff, give a little bit of a reservoir. Although in a situation like that,
although the water table,
yeah. Are the boxes above grade?
Typically they're sunk down.
They might have curbing.
Yeah, you have a curbing typically you'd have a curbing that was anywhere from 4 to 12 inches. Just so there's a little bit of a reservoir when the runoff goes into it. Again, it's nothing I've ever designed. I'm familiar with them. So there's a lot of this is rule of thumb kind of stuff. And as far as like putting them in the dirt parking lot, like 3 or 4 bollards do wonders.
All right, well,
it's good to encourage drivers to park responsibly.
Yeah, right.
So I think it's worth, just because I didn't see that, I could go back and look at the plans, but I didn't see a landscaping, or a planting.
That's correct.
Or sand fencing plan at all. And so if we're gonna close the project out, I think that needs to be part of it before it gets closed out.
And didn't they take down some of the bushes on
They took all the landscaping out, and I never saw a landscaping.
The inside and across Fairfield Beach Road, the roses used to be there.
They took the roses out?
Did they take most of them out?
I think they did, yeah.
I think they did.
Yeah, but that was not related to the reconstruction of the pavilion. That was just whatever it was.
I thought it was moving stuff across to this parking lot, but maybe I'm wrong.
No.
So why did they take the Rosa Rugosa? They had lots of Rosa Rugosa plants along that.
Well, I'll look and let you know, but
that was a big issue years ago.
Exactly.
Save the Rosa Rugosa.
Save the Rosa Rugosa, yeah.
So anyway, I think before they close the project out, I'd like to see a landscaping plan, particularly as it relates to building up some sort of vegetation that could be a green infrastructure in the front part, and sand fencing that would accrete sand. I think we would be remiss in not putting that in. Now, they may not want to do it on purpose, but I think that needs to be part of our plan. So I'm happy to write that letter. I will bring it for approval. I will send it around for approval in our next meeting.
Okay.
Penfield resiliency, we already talked about, that's on hold pending notice of violation. Tide gate repair inventory and planning. So I have not seen an update on the schedule for tide gates, although if you look in the capital plan, I was looking at the capital plan, they have phase 1 tide gate repair and maintenance, and they have phase 2 tide gate repair and maintenance about 3 or 4 years out. So they haven't specified which tide gates go in those, but there presumably there's a dollar amount allocated to those items. So presumably they do have some backup for that, so we can understand which tide gates are being repaired. We know the ones that are on the current capital plan: South Pine Creek tide gate, the Turney Creek tide gate, the McLeavy and the Riverside Creek tide gates are all actively funded on the current capital plan. And will happen over the next, some of them already started, but they'll happen over the next 2 years.
So the future ones that are lumped together I believe that's talking about the list that was developed by the Tide Gate.
The race did it.
Yeah, Tide Gate status report. And there's like 33 Tide Gates or something. And many of them are just flapper gates, or they're open pipes that
which desperately need to be replaced.
Could use a flap gate.
They have
maybe there was
like
one
shellfish in them. They are not working. They're not functioning correctly today. So I would like to actually see what that schedule is and when they're going to repair and maintain.
Yeah, I know. I have looked at that. I have looked at that report. Bill has it, and he's not ready to release it yet because he wanted to do some slight changes to it, and it had like a priority for each Tide Gate, and I don't know what they are, but.
So is this a Bill Hurley project that he put together?
It was actually Conservation Department did it.
Yeah. It was a project went out to bid. Race was the successful bidder. And they analyzed all the Tide Gates, looked at them, documented with pictures, and did a report. I think that's something that our board should take that. It's quite a lengthy report. Our board should take that report and whittle it down to just a commentary on like a one-pager on each of the 33 Tide Gates, or maybe 2 per page, and publish it in our files and documents section.
As soon as Bill's ready to release it. What was his timing on releasing it?
Unspecified. That'll be a good project for our new secretary to do.
Can you ask Bill Hurley when he's going to give it to us? Is that what you want the secretary to do?
That's an easy thing.
I'll ring him right up. Dick told me to call you, Bill.
Oh.
All right.
How long is Dick said going to continue? Well, Dick said.
So let's move on to item 5, which is, I think, the big project.
Before we move on, can I just ask a question?
Yes.
Has anybody been near the Perry's Green bulkhead project?
Yes.
Lately?
Yes.
Yeah, because I was there, I guess, maybe 10 days ago, and it looked like they had a long way to go to finish.
No, I don't think so. It's pretty,
I shouldn't say the project itself, but there was still fencing and equipment.
Well, yeah, no, the fencing is still up. The rough grading has all been done, I think.
Right.
They need to do the final grading, and I'm unsure whether they're going to sod it or wait till next spring to put grass seed there. I don't know what that is, because the timing for restoring the grass surface is kind of iffy. The last one maybe a week ago now, they were forming the concrete caps over the replaced stone wall.
Mm-hmm.
So those are probably poured by now, and the forms have been stripped. So the concrete caps were the last tangible thing to my view that they needed to do, other than the final grading.
Right. So it just looked worse than it really was.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think, John, you had a question about the 2 elevations of the stone retaining wall.
I think you answered it for me when we were here, I think, right?
Yeah, because the lower level of the finished grading, which is supported by a concrete wall and then backed up by a higher concrete wall, which continues outside of this little cut in. That's because there were bushes in the original Perry's Green that were beneficial bushes, and you should leave them alone. So they left them alone, and they built the walls around. Well, actually, they didn't leave them alone. They took them out, built the walls, and then put them back in.
The beneficial.
So we would have food for the migrating birds or whatever function they form. So that's why the 2 levels, and they are shoreline plants. So they wanted them to get a slug of salt water when there was a real high tide. So that's why the 2 different levels.
Okay, thank you. But that's also the wall that you said that they built lower than you.
Right. The pictures that I sent around were before the concrete caps were put on. Mm-hmm. So the 6 inches different. I said it looks like it's like 6 inches below the rest of the timber wall. That's because the 6-inch concrete cap needs to be put on.
Still to be put on.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to move us to agenda item 5, which is an update on the 2024-25 Master Flood Mitigation and Resilience Plan, which is technically the Master Flood Protection, Climate Resilience, and Erosion Control Plan.
We like long titles.
So basically that was the ARPA funds, which were the remaining funds that needed to be allocated, were approved in the RTM meeting last night. So we now have a fully funded project. So we will be informing Weston and Sampson and, well, actually tomorrow, I believe in the BOS, the contract will be going in front of the BOS for approval. Is that correct, Prue? Do you know?
That is correct.
So I guess technically
wait a second.
I thought it was going in tomorrow's BOS meeting.
No, you know what happened? The contract did not get approved with some of the revisions, and so I believe it was moved to the January Board of Selectmen, the first January 8th.
What? Really? Oh, bummer. All right. So I guess January 8th, then it will go in front of the Board of Selectmen, and then we will be able to officially award the job. That's unfortunate.
I'm going to confirm it real quick with the agenda.
Yeah, I had just heard it was going on tomorrow, so I guess I didn't realize there was an issue with the contract. So the next steps then, it may be that it'll be in January now, is to set up a kickoff meeting, and then after the kickoff meeting, there are several days of site visits that we will be doing, and so I wanted to just talk about whether we want a core flood and erosion team to be sort of overseeing and part of the core team for this, or whether the whole flood and erosion group would like to be part of this. I'm happy to make it the whole flood and erosion group. It means that we need to notice it as a meeting, because a special meeting, because we would have a quorum. But I don't have a problem with that. I think the kickoff meeting should be everyone invited to it. So the way the project is going to run right now, the proposal was you'd have a kickoff meeting. We'd have a couple days of site visits where the consultants would come in, and we'd just go around to all the areas that flood and talk about that. And then we'd have monthly updates. And then probably there would be a couple critical dates. So the project itself is going to be an evaluation. The first part of the project is going to be an evaluation of where the town floods and how it floods. So we've got modeling, coastal modeling to look at the coastal sections. We didn't specify overt riverine modeling, but we do have modeling from when we did the Rooster River detention basin, so we'll be using that as a way to understand the flooding of the Rooster River. What we don't have is any real modeling of the Mill River, and so one of the things we need to talk about is whether we need to do some sort of at least high-level modeling of Mill River. And technically Sasko Creek is our other watershed, so we really have 3 watersheds coming into our town. One's the Rooster River, into Ash Creek. We've got the Mill River, and then we've got the Sasko Creek. So one of the things we need to decide are, do we authorize additional funds to do modeling for Mill River or not? And how much, I guess the question is, how much can they use the modeling that was done for the Rooster River detention basins? Because it was done by a different firm. And I don't know, people don't like to...
Well, but it's also different areas. I mean,
No, I'm saying the Rooster River modeling, can we actually go back and have the consultant have access to the modeling, because that modeling was done by a different firm, and sometimes...
But the modeling depends on the flood or the flood, not the floodplain.
The watershed.
The watershed, thank you.
Yeah.
The modeling depends on the watershed that's feeding that.
Yeah, so that was done in order to determine detention basins.
Yeah, that's all new information, so that would have to be done from scratch.
Well, the Rooster River was done for the detention basin, so that was done in order to determine where...
I'm talking Mill.
I'm not talking about Mill River would have to be done.
That's all brand new.
Yes, total agreement. I was wondering whether we needed to go back and do any further modeling on Rooster River, is the question. I don't think so.
I would think the Rooster River is done as much as it's going to be addressed in this decade at least.
Well, the modeling is, although I'd like to continuing to look at opportunities to add even more resilience to the Rooster River area beyond the detention basins. I feel like that's a good first step.
Like bank erosion is a wonderful topic along most of its length.
Yeah, well, I was built up, and right now it's hard to get people to unbuild up the banks when they've constructed concrete walls. So anyway, so there will be, the first step is going to be sort of just assessing the risks and then preparing a visual of that. One of the things we need to talk about is at what point do we want to bring the public in terms of meetings. So my sense is we probably want to bring the public in before we even do that modeling to understand what areas and what concerns they have that they want to make sure we evaluate and look at as this project progresses, to at least get that on the table. So that would mean a series of public meetings before we even start right at the beginning of the process.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that you'd want to have a couple of meetings just to identify where the group is in their thinking of how to go forward, and then and then have public meetings at the end of, establish a preliminary vision, let's say, of what's going to be addressed in this master plan, and then have a meeting to present that to the public and get criticism and added items that are not included and feedback from the public.
Well, the RFP is sort of laid out the flow, which is you do the risk modeling, then you look at each of the 15 segments that we identified across town, and you look at 1 to 2 resilience options for those, and then you take the lead resilience option and you do not just a site plan of it, but you do some sort of a visualization so a resident can see what would that actually look like. So if we look at a raised roadway with a little bit of a wall, what would that look like? How would that look to someone who was living across the street from that? So that right now the plan is to do risk modeling, resilience options for the 15 segments, which were laid out in the RFP. And they were, just to remind people, there was the Southport Shore, then there were 9 segments that were basically what the Army Corps did, the 9 segments that were in the 2015 plan and the Army Corps plan. So Pine Creek, then Sasko Hill to wastewater treatment plant to Reef Road to the Jackie Durrell Pavilion, Penfield Beach area, Fairfield Beach Club area, Jennings Beach to Ash Creek, including Riverside Drive, and then the peninsula. And then we had the broader Mill River watershed, the broader Rooster River watershed, the underpasses, the downtown, and the Sasko Brook watershed. So those were the segments that we asked them to look at resilience options for.
Were those different segments identified through public input, or was that just...
That was not. So that's why I kind of think we need to sit down with the public at the beginning of this and just say, are we missing anything? Do you feel like the watersheds are pretty big areas.
Oh, yeah. So their input might help us zero in on...
certain segments, yeah.
Inside of those segments.
Yeah. So I think we need public meeting like right at the beginning of the project. Yeah. And just lay out, here's the process that we were going to follow. What do you think? Mm-hmm.
Could some of the areas be grouped? Like, for instance, if you're doing the water treatment from Reef to Jackie Durrell to Pavilion to Beach Club, or Beach Club Jennings, just like the Fairfield, the peninsula is so different than the others.
Well, the peninsula's a separate.
Right. So, but do them in like groups?
Well, I think we would look at similar resilience options for similar, like the way the waves break and the fetch that comes across the peninsula or the Penfield Pavilion is the same as Jennings. I mean, so you're going to have, and this is the same as that Reef Road.
So define them that way.
So, well, the flooding issues are different in the sense that Jennings has a big berm, a vegetated berm that keeps the water out, so you don't have to worry as much. There's like low points, but you don't have to really worry as much, whereas the Beach Club doesn't, and right. Penfield doesn't. And then the trickiest part is actually the Penfield Pavilion to Reef Road piece, I think, because it's just so built up with, I don't know what we're going to do in that section, if we're going to do anything.
Yeah.
So getting back to the public meeting, I think what you're suggesting is good, and what I'm hearing is that the group will get together, have their kickoff meetings, revisit the whole game plan here, see if they have second thoughts about anything, because as the consultants were putting together their proposal, they might have thought this, that, and the other thing, and then after that, schedule a public meeting and get the wisdom of the crowd.
So that would
you mean this group, but, and?
No, the consultants and whoever from this group is going to be sitting with them on a routine basis.
So it's probably going to be a February public meeting, which would be at the beginning of the project, right after the kickoff meeting.
Right. Yeah, I think the kickoff makes a lot of sense. I think having, and sharing it with the public that we went very high level in these 15 segments just to be able to gather bids, just to be able to give them something to bid on, at least a methodology. And now we want to bring you in before we go any further with execution to make sure that those 15 made sense, or sub-segments inside of those different geographical areas, the issues that relate to them. I think that makes a lot of sense. And we talked about this, I think, at the last meeting. Everything needs to be over-communicated, right? You know, in order to make sure people feel like they're part of the process.
We might need 2 public meetings.
We could. And it struck me when Carol was saying that, thinking about combining some, maybe doing it by the geographical area, doing the meetings by geographical area, because there are people who are going to be in the Penfield, Jennings areas versus the Peninsula versus the Rooster River area. That's what I thought you were saying.
Yeah, exactly.
You should bring those people together, and you're hearing the different parts of town.
It's part of your vision.
Right.
Okay.
This is how we identified your segment. Now tell us what we should be pointing these experts at first, and we'll prioritize, and we'll come back to you and tell you what they find.
All right.
And the 1 or 2 mitigating, or.
So I think let's group the segments, because we can't have 15 public meetings. But
No.
I think we can sort of have a Mill River, Rooster River probably, or maybe Mill River. Well, Mill River is a big watershed.
It's you're starting up by the reservoir, right? Further.
Well beyond Fairfield. Yeah. All right. So I think let's target that for February. Then we would have the actual modeling, and then we go back out again and say, here's what we found in terms of the risks that you're going to be facing. Then we would do the resilience measures and go back out again and say, here's what we're proposing to do from a resilience standpoint, and here's what the costs are.
I found a lot of value thinking ahead in the way that they restarted the POCD at Osborne Hill that day, and they had the different areas up. I can picture us having a board up of each of the segments, however we combine them.
That's true. We could have one big public meeting and have the different segments.
I found that to be really compelling, because people were coming up and listening to other people from other segments, and they're like, oh, wow, I hadn't thought about that. So there was a lot of learning going on at Osborne Hill that day around POCD in the different areas. And you got a big enough space, you get all the people in place, you bring the consultants in, it's one time, it's not hours, we're paying them. So I found a lot of value in that.
Well, David Murphy is willing to run these public meetings as part of his fee structure. We have extra money left over with his part of his project. So he would. The consultants right now bid on just doing 2 public meetings, so we'd probably use them for the the inundation risks piece, and then the resilience option piece, just to show here's what we're proposing and why we're proposing it. So I would say that we use the consultants for those 2 in these upfront meetings to get the input. Probably use someone like a David Murphy to run them. All right. So I think
Okay, so that's the meetings will be sooner rather than later.
There'll be a series,
Going back to who from FIRB will be on these meetings, I think a smaller group is better. A representative group that's not a quorum. And I guess our quorum now is 4, because we can have up to 3, and that's not a majority.
So we can only, have 3 people.
We can have up to 3 people. And whoever winds up being on that. And then they can just come back and report to the board at our regular monthly meetings as to what progress is being made and what questions may come up. And if something significant needs input from this entire board, we can always call a special meeting. You can always have a special meeting by phone. We don't have to.
Well, I think the whole board should be on the kickoff meeting, just because I think everyone needs to hear that. And I think everyone would want to. But I'd be fine with a smaller group attending the regular meetings.
Did we ever pursue the Rooster River representation on the board? Remember we had a couple names that were sent to us by
We're still looking for.
We got Rooster River representation. He lives in the
North Stratfield. All right.
Watershed. He lives in the watershed.
It would not be a terrible thing to have, if we're gonna have 3 people, have a person, maybe if we can, from
Rooster.
Some of them,
Yeah,
certainly.
I mean, that has always
We
been.
put out feelers, it's just finding someone.
Yeah.
If we have those 2 names, right?
We're reaching out to them, and then someone else, who's a coastal person, Dr. Romeo, has put his name forward. But yes, we are still looking for, because we have 2 open spots once you step off, and then we have 2 alternate spots.
Right.
To fill.
But alternates or regular voting members can still be the 3 that go, that does not make up the quorum.
Right.
Okay.
So then the question is, for the site visits, would more than just the 3 want to attend site visits? I mean, I feel like I'm happy to notice it as a meeting if people would want to go on the site visits. I mean, you may not be able to because you're working.
Yeah, I could probably adjust my schedule if it's late in the day.
Right.
I'd be interested, but I would not make it. I would not plan it. I would.
I'd
come as a resident.
If it's an option.
It was an option. I'd love to learn.
Okay.
Right.
Why don't we just sort of set up the site visit, see who wants to go? If 4 people want to go, then we have to notice it. If we don't, then we don't.
Yeah, so you just play one by one.
Okay. The last question.
I think the most significant member of a site visit team would be Bill Hurley, because that's where all the historical information resides.
Well, I'm assuming he's going to lead the site visits.
That's even better.
So.
Yeah, I mean, the project team structure is we're gonna have to vet that out, right?
Well, there's supposed to be. I'd asked Bill Gerber and to set up, and Eli, and through Bill Gerber, Eli is supposed to be setting up a meeting to look at what's the core team gonna look at beyond flood erosion people. What's that gonna look like? And he has not set that up yet, probably because I guess if it hasn't been approved by the Board of Selectmen, he probably doesn't feel like we can, but it's going to be approved. The funding has been approved through the RTM, so it's really just the contract itself has to go in front of the Board of Selectmen. So.
They're funny like that?
What?
They're funny like that?
Yeah. So that may happen in January, it looks like. The other thing is an advisory board. Would there be value in having an advisory board, at least be in on kind of the big picture of what we're going to look at to tell us, we think you should look at this, this, and this. So the people I've been thinking about, someone from Inland Wetlands and Conservation, maybe Ted Luxinger, if I'm going to pronounce that correctly. Circa, John Trzynski had expressed an interest in being part of it. I don't know if Jim O'Donnell would want to as well, but they both expressed.
Advisory board to the master plan effort?
Yeah, the way Circa described it is they would envision their role being to come at, the kickoff meeting and then at key points to help us in case there's things other towns are doing. I mean, they look at across Connecticut, so they look at what lots of different towns are doing, and they look at it as an opportunity to take what we're doing and then bring it out to other towns as well. So they would be looking at it as a way to take knowledge and disseminate it and take best practices and bring it to other towns. And then I didn't know if we should ask someone from MetroCog to sit on an advisory board. We haven't really done a lot with the COG. The only other, so the COG has 5 towns, and 3 of them are coastal. So Stratfield, Bridgeport, and us are coastal. So you'd think that it might be something interesting to do from a COG standpoint. So I could reach out to the COG and just see if they would be interested in being part of an advisory board. I wouldn't envision the advisory board they'd be sort of a touch point at a couple key times during the project. They wouldn't be on monthly calls or anything like that. So
the only other one that I had mentioned to you was Save the Sound just announced this week.
I looked at that. It looks like they're not doing. they have an executive director. They had 4 staff, but I'm not sure that they're actually doing projects. And it's not grant. It's funded by the Henry and Hale Doherty, but I don't think they're actually doing projects.
It just seems like it's brand new. I don't know what they're doing. It was announced this week by Save the Sound, so they've just announced a coastal or a resilience initiative inside of Save the Sound. And I just felt like if they're looking up and down the coastline, that would be
I'm happy to call their executive director and just see if that's something that they would feel there's value added.
No sense in paying people here for something that they've already sorted out, or vice versa. Like you said about Metrocog, if we're doing something and we can share it with them, then so we should consider it.
So that's all I had on the master plan. Are there any questions?
On the advisory group, I don't remember, did the RFP mention that or provide for it?
Well, there would not be any cost to this. I mean, we wouldn't pay them.
Well, there would be cost to the consultant, and I could see the consultant having an issue if they're all of a sudden now there's another body they have to deal with.
Oh, that's a good question. I was thinking more that they would come to the kickoff meeting and they would just be another part of the project team that would be giving.
Was there a steering committee outlined in the RFP?
No. That's what we're going to do. That's what I asked Bill.
Kickoff,
no, pre-kickoff. I want a steering.
Right.
I want a steering committee who's going to run the project. We have a project manager assigned by the town.
Well, that's to be expected, and that's part of the contract. But I'm just concerned that by adding another layer of an advisory group, you're going to consume resources on the consultant level, and they could object to that, especially because it's not in the contract.
That's a good. I mean, I don't know how we found that out.
During the kickoff meeting or the pre-kickoff meeting, you do a RACI, and you figure out who's going to be running it and who's accountable, and then who's informed, right? And maybe some of the people that we talked about here, they don't take up the time of the consultants, but we keep them informed. They're on copy, and if they have any feedback on analysis or decisions.
If they want to circle back through the town officials or through us,
as opposed to through the consultant.
As opposed to having direct contact with the consultant.
I mean, we could also sound the consultant out to see if they would see if there's an issue.
Right, what they signed on for versus what we're going to ask them to do.
So we could ask whether that would be an issue.
Yeah. Okay.
So
something to think about.
I'm just making a note of that. All right, so the last, anything else on this before we move on to the last agenda item, which is to hear, consider, and act upon any other business which may properly come before the board?
No.
Okay, the only thing, I had 2 items on other business. One is, we don't need to do this right away, but I do think we should go back and recommend that the town puts together a climate resilience fund with any surplus, $25. I don't know if we're going to have a surplus this year, but for those of you who are aware of...
Stormwater Authority and Climate Resiliency Fund.
Well, climate resiliency funds can be invested the same way pension funds can be invested, which means that you actually make more money and you can grow. They can grow faster than a typical town fund. So it makes a lot of sense to put any surplus or some of the surplus into a climate resilience fund.
Should be really prescriptive about what those funds can be used for, because if someone hears climate resiliency and we have a big storm and there's flooding, they're going to say, are we using this to hand out to residents to do this, that, or that?
Well, we'd have to decide. I mean, it would be allocated by, the town bodies would have to authorize any distribution of it.
Yeah.
So we would have to figure out how to make it work. But I'd look at Brantford right now as the town that has done this successfully, and I'm not sure where it sits. I think it sits in the finance department.
And is this used in investment in capital projects to drive resiliency?
I don't know that they've actually spent any of theirs yet.
Right, but is that the intent?
The intent is that it's funds that are more readily available, that don't have to go through as much authorization to be used. So, for example, we wanted to buy out a property a couple years ago. The town wanted to, that was in a flood area, and we couldn't make an offer, and the guy ended up selling it.
Fast enough.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that I understand. That's a capital kind of project. I'm talking about a FEMA type of fund. I don't want people to hear climate resiliency or climate fund and also think that this is something that these funds are now been put aside to maybe, again, remediate post a storm.
Well, we may choose to spend them that way. I mean, FEMA, if we're considered a disaster area, presumably we would get FEMA disaster relief funds, ability to apply for those, and we would use those for disaster. But if it's not a named storm, we might choose to, if there was real damage, we might choose to do something with this fund. But I think the idea would be to increase the level of resilience as opposed to necessarily
clean up damage.
Absolutely, yeah, right.
Could I Google Branford and find out if there's stuff on their webpage about this, or is it going to be too?
They started their fund probably about 5 years ago now with $1 million, and I think they were putting $250,000 in each year.
Wow.
And to my knowledge, they have not expended any of it yet. They're just anticipating that they would need it for future resiliency issues. But I could check that. I want to say his name was Tom. He was their head of finance at the time. He just put it together. I'd have to go back and look.
Interesting idea.
So anyway, the reason I like it is because it grows at a higher rate, and so we can accumulate funds faster because you can invest it in I don't want to say risky investments, but you have to be super conservative with town funds, whereas your pension funds allow you to be a little bit more aggressive with your investment options, and it tends to get a higher rate of return. And then the other thing is, do we need to do any kind of response to Rick Grauer's note? All of you were copied on that. I would say no. But
I agree.
Nothing?
Copied 108 people.
Copied 100, there were 108 people on that email?
Well, we did respond to him.
What did we say?
Whenever you send an email into our email account, you get an automatic reply.
Oh.
This is thank you for your comments. Although we cannot respond individually, I'm paraphrasing, although we cannot respond individually, please be assured that each member of our board has received your communication and will take it under advisement.
Okay.
So
we're taking it under advisement, and we have, I feel the response is that we're doing this master plan.
Yes.
And we will, as part of that, be looking at Penfield.
Yes.
And please come to our
our public meeting, and please help us promote and publicize.
I don't know if I can do that.
All right. I have no other business, so if anyone else does.
Well, so going back to the first point, do you want to write to the town or not?
On the climate resilience fund? Yeah, I think we should. We have a letter that we had written to them about when Brenda was still in place, and it didn't go anywhere. So I think with the new administration, I think it's worth
Do we need a motion to do that?
Sure.
Sure, why not? Did that communication have both the Stormwater Authority and
the climate resilience? The Stormwater Authority is one of the things we asked the consultant to provide us a point of view on whether it would make sense for our town to have a Stormwater Authority. So I want them to do that work and make a formal recommendation as part of this plan for Stormwater Authority.
One of my hang-ups on the Stormwater Authority is that commits in writing that our town resources will be used to take the inventory of all the culverts in town that are 60 years old, decide which ones need to be purely repaired, replaced, and which ones need to be augmented in view of the now larger rain bombs that we're experiencing, and just pay attention to this on an ongoing basis, because we haven't historically.
Well, we put $500,000 into each year's capital plan for stormwater infrastructure upgrades, and I don't think that's anywhere near enough.
No, it's not.
But the problem with stormwater authorities is that they can be seen by many people as a tax, because in essence, every single person and every single building will get an assessment based upon impervious surface, and that's going to be controversial. So I think we need to understand the benefit trade-off to that. I mean, yes, that will allow us to have, to add resilience to our town.
Right.
Absolutely. But it comes at a cost to each individual resident based upon their percentage. I think there's a couple different ways.
That's why we call ourselves a society. Right.
So I'm actually a proponent. I actually think it would make sense to do it, but I think I'd like to have a written documentation of the pros and cons to be able to present it to the town, and that's what this consultant will do. Do you have any experience with stormwater authorities in Milford? Did they look at it at all?
I think there's only one or two of them in the entire state.
New London was one.
Yeah,
There's
New
two. There's a second one too. I can't remember it.
New London was one that came to my mind. And
Yeah.
I know absolutely nothing about the machinations.
It can be, there's 3 different ways you can do the assessment. You can do it as a percentage of impervious. I mean, there's lots of different, there's nuances to it. And I think we would just need to do some evaluation of whether it makes sense for our town.
You also run into the problem of, under the MS4, they encourage the towns to disconnect impervious areas. How do you go and assess properties that have been disconnected? Because if I've got 100% disconnection by impervious area, why should I be paying the same taxes as somebody that's just dumping all of their water into the...
Right into it, yeah.
That's why we call it a society.
But maybe they must have had to deal with that in New London, right?
I would assume that they did.
And so that would be the types of things we'd look at, is how did they deal with that issue?
Is New London a new program? How long?
They did, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago.
3 years maybe.
And there was another one too, and I'm blanking on the name, but I believe there are 2 in Connecticut, is my recollection. Anyway, so I would propose we defer further conversation on this until the consultant has given us a analysis of whether it makes sense for our town and how to deal with some of these issues and how it would actually work. Okay. And then we can make an informed decision whether to propose it or not. All right, I'm going to propose, unless anyone has any other business, that we adjourn the meeting.
I second.
All right, we are so moved. We're adjourning at 8:18.
If I can figure out how to.
Thank you, Prue.
Figure out how to stop recording. Prue, are you up on the internet connection?
Thank you. Yes, hold on one second.
Can you stop the meeting that way more easily than I can?
Thank you for coming.
Figure out.
I can. I can end the meeting. All right, thanks everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Merry Christmas.